What is up guys, my name is Chase and this is the 8BitDo 02 controller. This is a very tiny basic Bluetooth controller that can work with your Nintendo Switch, your PC or Mac, and most other devices that support a Bluetooth connection. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of got this controller as a joke at first. I mean, when you look at it, it is a tiny controller. I figured I would just get this controller for the novelty of it, but after using it for a while, do I think this is an actual usable controller? Well, let's talk about some of my pros and cons with the 02 controller. My first pro with this controller is the size. Obviously, this controller is very small, which also means that it is very compact. It can literally fit in the palm of your hand, which makes it very convenient for carrying around with you, or even just finding a place to store it. Unlike regular controllers where it's like always a hassle trying to figure out where to store them, this thing is so small that you're bound to be able to find somewhere in like a drawer or somewhere to fit it. I think if you're trying to make an on-the-go package with your Nintendo Switch or whatever, this is a great controller to really keep things small and compact. In fact, this controller even comes with a color matching wrist strap, which attaches with a string. It is even smaller than the Nintendo Switch Joy-Con, which means that it is really great for portable play. Speaking of playing, my next pro with this controller is the actual buttons. I was quite impressed to find that this controller has some very decent buttons. I'd say one of the things 8BitDo is most notable for is their Super Nintendo basically replica controllers. I've reviewed the SN30 Pro Plus in the past, and I was so surprised with how good they made that D-pad. And with the 02 controller, they don't bring the exact same D-pad, but they do bring a D-pad that feels very nice to use, especially for 2D games. I'd say it's very similar to the D-pad on the Nintendo Switch Lite, unlike the standard Switch Joy-Con where it's just like super duper clicky and it's not really fun to use for 2D side-scrollers. The D-pad on the 02 controller just feels very nice. It's like really soft, but not too soft where it's uncomfortable. It's just all around a very solid feeling D-pad. And pretty much the same thing with the buttons. Once again, they're not like the Switch Joy-Con buttons, which are very clicky. These ones are pretty soft while also having some like firmness to it. You also have a start and select button in the middle, and an L and R button on the top. The L and R buttons are actually very clicky, which I think actually works for this controller because of the size. Having this clicky, like tactile feedback, it makes it easier to know when you're actually pressing the L and R buttons. So overall, I was very surprised with the buttons on this controller, especially for its size. So those were some of my pros with the 8BitDo 02 controller. Now let's move on to some of my cons. My first con with the 8BitDo 02 controller is actually once again the size. We've already talked about the fact that this controller is very small and very compact, but I will say the very small size automatically makes it not my preferred way to play most games. Like trying to hold it with two hands, it's good enough to where if you really want a small and portable controller, it gets the job done, but it's definitely not the most comfortable way to play. Your hands can feel very cramped, especially if you do long sessions of playing. Trying to get both of your hands to fit on the controller can be kind of a struggle. So with the size of this controller, on one hand it makes it really great for portability, on the other hand it's not very great for comfort. And then my second con with the 02 controller is the lack of buttons. Once again, we've already talked about how the buttons that this controller does offer are very nice. However, it can be a bit troublesome trying to use this controller because of how little buttons there are. And my main gripe is that there is not some kind of a power or sync button on this controller. I think for what you're getting, this is pretty much a Super Nintendo controller. You know, obviously there are no analog sticks or anything, and they probably wouldn't be able to fit that on the face of this controller. However, if they just had like a sync button on the bottom right or something, it would have been nice, because trying to sync this controller to different operating systems and with different devices, it can be a bit difficult to do with the limited buttons that you do have. In fact, if you look on the back of this controller, there are a bunch of different button inputs for every device that you can sync this controller with, and it just makes it a bit difficult to remember all of that. Whenever I'm trying to sync this with my Nintendo Switch, I feel like I have to do like a cheat code or something. So I think if they just had one extra button on this controller for power and syncing, it would have been really welcomed. So overall, I think the 8BitDo 02 controller gets the job done for what it is trying to do. I think the main reason you would get this controller is if you are looking for a controller that is very small and compact. If you're very limited on space and you just need a tiny controller that doesn't take up much room, this controller will get the job done. The size does make it very on-the-go friendly, but it does come at a slight cost of comfort. And while the buttons do feel really great, it would have been nice if there was at least one more button for ease of use. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think of the 8BitDo 02 controller. If you want to watch my review of the 8BitDo SN30 Pro Plus controller, feel free to check out the video below. For now, thank you so much for watching. My name is Chase, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye.